I founded it when I was a junior, end of my junior year here at Maryland. And I went through a lot. Yeah. Oh, okay. I went through a lot, or I learned a lot in the last 2.5 years about just building an engineering team and what you should know if you ever go into if you ever choose to build a tech startup. Things that I didn't know. I made a lot of mistakes, but today I'm going to tell you a lot of things that you probably have never ever thought about when you actually start a tech startup. So I'm going to ask a question to the audience right now. How many of you here want to actually start your own company, a tech company? Raise your hand. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's why you're here, because that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm not going to be talking about just building like a side project. What my talk is going to be about is if you ever want to do a real world, fast growth tech startup, these are the things that you need to know. Okay. So, I have this. So I'm gonna, just explain a little bit about me. I graduated from Maryland in 2014. I studied computer science. And I was in the Hinman CEOs program. And if you're a freshman or sophomore, I highly recommend joining the Hinman CEOs program if you want to start your own business. And I co-founded FiscalNote when I was 21. And like I said, it's a DC tech startup that does government analytics. And just about in October 2015, I left FiscalNote and I started another company called Orange Now. Now, Orange Now is basically, well, on the outside, it's basically an online grocery store that specializes in Asian groceries. But on the inside, it's this whole routing technology that's doing all the routing, the orders in the background, optimizing for fast shipping and low cost. And after talking to a bunch of investors this round with Orange Now, a lot of people were very interested in our technology at Orange Now. And they said they wanted us to pursue the technology. A lot of investors, they're very interested in technology. So we decided to shut down Orange Now, sunset Orange Now, and start a new company called Pathover, which is my current company right now, and to focus purely on the logistics and technology in the background. So Orange Now, in the process of shutting it down, we actually got a buyout offer for the brand from one of our partners. So we're actually in the process of selling the company Orange Now right now. And after that goes through, we're going to pursue, I'm going to pursue full-time on Pathover. And I can talk about more about Pathover in a different setting here. So here are the things I'm going to be talking about today. So like I said, this talk is about building an engineering team. So it's mostly catered towards basically a CTO or early technical person of a company, right? So I'm going to telling you guys, what is your role? What is your role at this moment in time and for the next year or so if you do decide to pursue a tech startup? And I'm going to give you advice on how to choose the right tech stack, the right technologies that you need to use when you pursue the software company that you're about to build. And I'm going to give you advice on whether you should outsource or not, how you should do your testing, especially in this early stage, if you do choose to do testing, which I know most of you probably won't, and some advice on structuring your application in case if this is your first time building a web application or a mobile application or so. I'm going to tell you how to hire for the best, give you advice on hiring practices, and along with hiring, how to assemble your team, your base team, and then tell you more about some things about onboarding people when you bring people on, and then some little things that I'll reveal later, and then closing, I'll tell you what your one goal should be when you're building this company. So first things first. You're about to start a new company, a new software company, right? And you're the CTO, you're the technical person, you have a business person or so, or maybe you're both. You're the CEO and you're CTO. And what is the role of the technical person in this startup? Well, first, you are basically going to be the support beam for the business side. Everything you do, whether you're going to build out features really fast, get a product out, like you are there so the business can run, right? Your goal is to get products and features out as fast as possible, because you might pivot in like a month. You don't know what the customers want. You want a prototype out there really, really fast. So your goal is to get something out really fast, whether it's the actual product or whether it's a new feature or so. You want to make sure your site or your app or whatever never goes down. That's a thing that you got to keep in mind. It has to never go down. You want to recruit. You're recruiting constantly. You're recruiting for the best talent. If you're serious about doing tech startup, you're not going to be able to do this alone. You have to build a great team. So recruiting the best engineering talent is a must. You also must be basically a technical figurehead. So you know how the CEO is the company figurehead, you're the technical figurehead. Everywhere you go, right, you represent your engineering team. Every conference you go, you represent your engineering team. And you will decide whether people look up to your engineering team or not. Whether you write blog posts about your engineering practices. We live in the age of social media, so you got to be constantly putting yourself out there. So this also helps in recruiting too. So basically, be a figurehead for your company. Next one is networking. So as a CTO, you're not going to be that person in the background coding. Maybe in the beginning. But in a couple months from now, since you're probably the co-founder, you're CTO or whatever, right? You have to be very active in meeting other people. Whether it's in DC, we're in here at DC, right? You got to go out to events, represent your company, as I said, meet other technical leaders, and even nationally, maybe you want to fly to a conference in like San Francisco. You go out there and represent your company since you're the CTO. And next, you want to build a great engineering culture. So the culture is a huge thing, right? You bring on people who match your culture. You bring on people that you feel really comfortable working with, right? You want to build this culture that you feel comfortable working with. The people that you want to build a team in which you feel comfortable working in, right? And then managing your engineering team is probably the hardest part. Coming from, if you're a first-time CTO and all you know is how to code, eventually you're going to grow into managing a team. And that's going to be really, really challenging. And I'll talk about that later. But the two most important things I want to emphasize over and over again is time and money. Everything from here on out, everything I'm going to talk about, since you're a startup, everything's going to be about time and money. Everything you do is time and money. Just remember that. Anything you choose to do, so ask yourself, am I wasting my time or am I wasting money? Because as a startup, whether you raise a seed round, whether you raise a pre-seed round, whether you're in Series A, the time is ticking. Every single day you burn money. Every single day you're closer to when you're going to fail, essentially. So how do you choose your technology? This question, there's huge debates on this. It's like so many people talk about this. Oh, let's use Rails. Oh, let's use Node.js or like Python or whatever. And oh, because Node is so fast with blah blah blah, and you're like, okay, well, but Rails is it's quick to get something out, all that stuff, right? It's a huge debate. So at FiscalNote, I just chose Rails because that was what I knew the best at that time. But after starting new companies, my path over, I was really considering like, what is if I had to start over, how would I choose this? And there are three things that you should consider when you're choosing your technology and you're serious about building a tech company. This has nothing to do with like having a side project, but this is when you're serious about building an engineering team, when you're serious about building a tech company. So the first question you ask is, can this stack or can these technologies scale on the technical side, right? Does it fulfill what I want to do? And I'll elaborate on more on each of these in the upcoming slides. The second one, which I think is the most important, is can the stack scale on the engineering operations side? Now think about that for a second. I'll talk about that more later. And the third one is there a big enough community so it doesn't slow down hiring? So is there enough people using this technology in which it doesn't make it so hard for me to go out there and hire someone when I expand my team? So to break it down, when you're choosing a technology, you got to think about how you can scale on the technical side. You got to think about how you can scale on the operations side. And you got to think about how you can optimize it for hiring. So scaling technically, this is, a lot of people talk about this because this is the easy thing to talk about. You just say, like I'm going to use Rails because, because of this, it has an ORM, it's like, everything's done for you, or like I want to use Node because it handles a lot more requests, like it's just much cooler. You start getting to these really technical arguments, right? Like maybe like relational databases are faster than, NoSQL databases and all this stuff. And that stuff you can just Google. Like to be honest with you, that stuff you can just, you can discuss with your other technical people on your team. You can figure out which one's the best for whatever you want to do. Whether, it's an enterprise software where, like you're not going to have millions and millions of requests a day, to like a big social media app that might have millions and millions of requests a day. So like the technology depends on what you want to do at that time. But when you're preparing to choose a stack, what you don't want to do is you don't want to premature scale. What that means is you don't want to waste your time thinking about all the things that could possibly happen, all the things that you got to prepare for, right? Because like I said before, the two most important things you got to think about is time and money. You can't spend a week debating what technology you're going to use because that's just a week wasted, right? And premature scaling, it's a problem because a lot of people try to prepare for everything in the future. You can't. Even if you prepare as much as you can, I guarantee you 90% of the things you prepare for won't happen. And you just wasted so much time preparing for that stuff. So only prepare for the things that you know in almost in the immediate future that's going to happen. And honestly, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what your tech stack is. Like it sometimes, because what matters most is your customer, and they don't care where your stack is. They don't care, what you use. They just want it to work, right? They just want to use something, right? And that brings me to the next 2 points I discussed. This is the most important thing if you're about to build a tech company. If you're about to build an engineering team, you have to scale operationally. Now, what does this mean? Okay, what does this mean? So let's just say you want to choose like a framework or technology in which you put the least amount of work into it, and that's better. Let me tell you why that's better. All right, so I'm going to give you an example like Ruby on Rails. I'm not promoting Ruby on Rails, but I'm going to give you an example like Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails is very, very mature. It's like almost a decade old, and a lot of things are built for you. A lot of things just happen for you, right? Think about this. Like the authentication is built for you. The models are all built. The migrations, the whole entire structure is laid out for you. Why? It's so you don't have to think about it, right? If you use a framework that's less mature, you're going to spend 2 or 3 weeks debating the structure about this app when you should be spending 2 or 3 weeks building features for the customer. All right? Remember, it's time and money. This is a startup. This isn't a side project. This is a business, right? So when you choose a stack, when you choose something that adds most value to the customer just basically in a faster time, right? You want to get things out faster. So like having these practices laid out already for you by Rails or like another like opinionated framework like Ember or whatever, it just saves you a lot of time. It saves you a lot of time. And as you bring more people on to your company, you're going to be expanding, right? Say you're hired for more Rails engineers. Well, Rails is all the same no matter what company you go to because it's opinionated. Opinionated basically means the structure is set for you. You don't set the structure, right? The structure is set for you. So everyone, no matter what company they work for, they always utilize the same structure. So that makes it so much easier to bring someone on, right? If you bring a new Ruby on Rails person, they don't have to learn your structure. They just jump on and they just go, right? They don't have to spend a week asking, why did you do it this way? Why did you do it this way? So having choosing a framework based off of whether it saves you a lot of time is extremely important in the business. Like I said before, you don't want people arguing, spending weeks, debating about structure, debating about all this stuff that you shouldn't be worrying about. And like I said, opinionated frameworks are better. They're better if you're doing a business. And I'm not going to get into this war between opinionated and non-opinionated. Non-opinionated would be like Node.js or like Express or like Angular.js, where you decide the structure. And I'm saying that's dangerous because say someone else coming in, you hired someone new who knows Angular and you use Angular, but that other person used the structure in a different way, right? And they're going to come in and be like, why did you do this, right? and you're gonna have a huge argument, and then they have to adapt to your structure, and it just wastes a lot of time. And like I said before, in a business, it's all about time and money, and in a startup, it's all about time and money. And the faster you can get things done, the better. When things are more organized, you move a lot faster, and that's what startups are all about. So more mature frameworks, I highly recommend you choose more mature frameworks than more immature frameworks, because you're just going to waste a lot of time rebuilding the same things that Rails already had. And I'll give you a good example. Like at FiscalNote, we use Ruby on Rails, right? And it was really fast. At Orange now, I use Node because I wanted to use Node because everyone was talking about it. Everyone's like, oh, Node is awesome, right? Node is like the next thing. But I made a huge mistake. I used Node, and I ended up building, I've ended up building the models. I ended up building the migrations. I ended up debating to myself internally, how should I structure this? I wasted so much time doing that, right? I wasted probably 2 or 3 weeks, right? And then when things go wrong, it could be my structure that's the fault. Whereas if someone told me, like the creators of Rails, they said the structure, they're really smart people, so you should definitely follow them, right? So if someone laid out the structure, I wouldn't have wasted so much time. And the business suffers, it ends up suffering. And that is why you always choose more mature frameworks. It doesn't matter what it is, that's how you choose it. So last part, when you're choosing technology stack, you got to optimize for hiring, right? So one problem that we had at FiscalNote, actually, we chose Ember.js. Yes, it is opinionated. It was great. Everyone can come in and they just jump on, right? But the problem is the community isn't that large. So it made it so much harder to hire a new Ember engineer. It took us 6 months to find one engineer, right? You're constantly interviewing. As a CTO, as a technical person, 1/3 of your time is going to be recruiting because you're going to expand your team, right? And if you choose a stack that isn't as popular, just because you think it's cool or whatever, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to find one extra person to join your team. And that's just a waste of time. It is such a waste of time that it just becomes you're just going to punch yourself in the face. So when you choose a stack, you really need to think about hiring as well, because you're not going to be yourself. You're going to be, in 2 years, you're going to be maybe 10 people, or maybe 15 people or so, or maybe even larger. So when you choose your stack, you got to be able to hire fast. Hire fast so you don't waste your time, right? And like I said before, scale operationally. So you got to be able to onboard fast, right? Imagine this, right? Imagine you chose a great stack, and you're able to hire someone within a week. Great. They come in a week, and then they onboard within a couple of days because you chose a great framework that is very structured, and they came on from another Rails shop, and they just jumped right in. That's how fast you want to move. What you don't want is you don't want to hire someone and they spend a month. So you don't want to. Sorry about this. You don't want to basically have a framework in which there's no community, and you spend a long time chasing after people, at the little amount of people that might know this framework, and you don't want to spend a lot of time for them to spend a month onboarding to learn your stack and learn everything that happens. You want to do this as fast as possible because the business is running, right? So you want to optimize for hiring. Extremely, extremely important. So I'm going to change subjects there. So now you know how to choose your stack, right? The stack was basically, you can look at it on the technical side, whether it's efficient or how fast it is or whatever. And the most important thing, like I said before, was optimized for operation, the whole operation side that you're going to see. And the last one would be the optimize for hiring. So at times, you're going to want to outsource some things. And if you're a business person, your first assumption, your first thing you want to do is kind of outsource something. But what I'm telling you right now is you don't want to outsource your core technology. So if you are serious about building a tech company, you shouldn't, how can you build a tech company and not build your tech in-house, right? You know what I'm saying? It's if you're building a tech company, you outsource your tech, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. I wrote right here, right? There might be cheap developers, but they're really crappy developers. Maybe they're outsourced in a different country, like Russia or India or China or whatever. First of all, they have a lot of bad practices. They have really slow development. That slow development is caused by them constantly changing their teams. right? Because they might work on one project one day, but they might switch to another project, but then they have to learn what the other person wrote before, and then you have all these really bad spaghetti code and all that crap. Like as a business person, you don't care because you don't know what the hell is going on over there. But as a technical person, if you choose to outsource your tech, you're really going to kill yourself at the end of it. And also, they can hold your app hostage. And what that means is, like they can't guarantee no bugs, right? If there's a bug and you already paid for like their service, they're gonna ask you, oh, we're not gonna fix it unless you pay extra, right? But it was their fault in the beginning, right? And you're gonna spend a lot of nights if it's in a different country, right? You're spending a lot of nights staying up at night and talking with people who can barely speak English. Outsourcing is very dangerous, but outsourcing is good if you outsource small parts of your application. For example, the testing part, right? Say like testing constantly changes because your app changes. If you can outsource like some front-end testing, that saves you a lot of time and it's cheaper. And then if things go wrong there, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't affect your core application. So that's when outsourcing becomes somewhat relevant and more efficient. Another thing when you're beginning is sometimes you know a technology already. Say like you come in and I already know like maybe I already know like Ruby on Rails, right? And if you don't want to get into this whole like, oh, what stack should I choose and all this stuff, you honestly just choose the one you know the best, so you can get a product out there faster. That's truly it. It's just like I said, technology doesn't matter. It's about how fast you get things out, how like quickly you meet the customer's demand, right? So when you choose a stack, honestly, just choose what you know, build it really fast. Don't build like the complete version of it, like your entire vision, right? You're gonna build a pretty incomplete MVP because I guarantee you 90% of the things you build, if you try to build a complete version, are not what customers want, and it will change over time. So you build a complete minimal, or you build a minimal viable product. That's what MVP is, a minimal product, so that when customers see it, they give you feedback, and you iterate after that. So it's always good to actually use what you know already. If you know PHP, use it. If you know Python, use that. Don't like say, oh, Node is like the hottest thing, I'm gonna learn that, and you waste your time learning it because you gotta get your product out. This isn't like school, this isn't like a side project, this is a business. It's all about time and it's all about money. So testing, this is like the bane of all startups here. Mainly because, like I said before, you gotta get things out fast. Now at FiscalNote, our first iteration of the product, we did zero testing. And it was really, really bad because it broke almost every single time we put it in front of a client. That was really, really bad. So like thinking about it afterwards, when we iterated the second time, we built a second product, we tested the core features because we still had to get things out fast. We still had to test the core things, like maybe like authentication, right? Like that can't go wrong, right? Or you have to test like the core features of your application, whatever you're building. So spend time testing those, and if you have a new feature idea, you build it as fast as you can, you get it out to the client, see if they like it, see if it's actually something that solves a problem of theirs. If it is, great. You bring it in, you complete it, you write tests for it, and it's good. However, if they don't want it, you just scrap it. You don't waste your time writing tests on a new feature. So only write tests for the core things on your application because it will save your life. It will save your life. But for new features, things that you aren't sure about that could go into your app in the long term, I would just develop it really, really fast, get customer feedback. If they like it, then you pursue that. If they don't, you scrap it. You don't waste any of your time writing tests, because tests actually take almost just as much time as building the feature. It kind of sucks, but that's the way it is. So this is basically for software development. If you're building a company, and if you guys never built like a full-fledged software application before, this is kind of what one looks like. And what you want to do, and this is for people who've never built a full-fledged application with mobile and like a web front and everything, is you want to structure it like this. This is the most common way to structure an application, for those of you who don't know. So you usually, what you do is you build a backend API that just handles all the modeling, the controllers, all the stuff that handles all the requests. Right? It's completely separated from the front end. because the front end can be anything. It's just like a template that you can remove and add, right, new templates. And that's why you see these 3 front end sides. So right here, the front end web application, it could be Angular or Ember or like Backbone or anything. It's just a front end component which calls the API. So you build a back end, it's basically front end agnostic, and you can basically build whatever you want on the front end that calls the API. If you decide to switch from Angular to Ember one day, great. You just build the Angular app, hook it up to the API. When it's all good, then you just discard the Ember app. It has nothing to do with the backend. And that's the way you should do it if you want to adapt. And the iOS app and Android app, they're basically just front ends. So when you actually download an app from the App Store, you're downloading the front end code that's being stored on it. And then when you actually open the app, it's talking to the backend, which is on a different server. That's basically what Ember and Angular are. They actually copy the iOS and Android model. So that's why you saw a separation between front end and back end. So, this is if for those of you who want to build an app, this is how you should structure it if you want to scale. All right, hiring. So this is probably a topic that most of you probably overlook because it's not relevant in the beginning, but it is extremely important. Like this was probably 40% of my time at FiscalNote because we were constantly expanding. If you're committed to building a tech company, you're literally going to spend 40% of your time hiring. So hiring is like an art. It is extremely hard. Let me tell you, it's extremely hard in the beginning because you have no brand name, right? You're eliminating cash. You can never pay you can never pay market price, right? And from the outside looking in, your chances of being a successful startup is very, very slim. All right, the people who are joining your company, they're taking a risk, and your job as a CTO when you're hiring engineers is to basically convince people, these engineers, to join your company. It's hard. You're selling your company. It's not like corporations where the candidates are selling themselves to the Google or whatever. You're trying to sell yourself so hard so you can get into Google. When you're starting a tech startup, you're selling your company so hard so you can get the best talent. It's the complete opposite, right? You want the best people, whether it's your friends or people you talk to randomly, right? You want them to join your company because you believe that it's going to be big and you want great talent. And it's very, very hard. You have to practice your pitching. You have to basically believe in your company so much that you're willing to pitch it to strangers with no shame, because your job is to hire great talent. You can't build this company yourself. You need a team. So a lot of people, so when you hire people, say you raise the seed round, right? You don't have a lot of money. And you have to basically survive off of giving equity, right? Now, equity is extremely important. There's something called the equity test. The equity test is basically, it determines whether, if a person who wants to join, right, and you give them an offer, say I'll give you, 0.25% and $90,000 if you join my company, right? And then what you do is you actually offer them maybe more equity, less pay, or less equity and more pay. So if you say, I'm going to offer you, I'll offer you 0.5%, but you take $80,000. And depending on the answer will really tell you kind of how they think of what they think about your company. So if they take more equity, that's a good sign. That's a good sign because they believe in your company enough to believe that if they get more equity, they're going to be richer, right? So it's a good test because, well, first of all, if they chose that option, you don't have to burn as much cash, right? You give away more equity because if the company is ever big, the equity is worth more. And if they chose the equity side, that means they truly believe in your company because they think it's going to be big one day. If they choose the money side, you got to kind of question why they're choosing the money. Maybe it's like a personal issue. They can't pay rent or whatever. But if it's just oh, I just want more money and they don't really care about the equity, it's usually a red flag. It's a red flag saying they're probably not as passionate about this idea as you. They're in it for the money, and you should probably pass on them, no matter how good they are, because you want people, and especially in the beginning, you want people who will stick with you for as long as possible. They will stick with you when things are going sour. And a great example of this was at FiscalNote. we actually had a Series A fallout. Now what that means is we got a term sheet from a Series A investor, and they pulled out within a couple of weeks. And that screwed us over because we only had around 2 months runway, meaning we're gonna run out of cash to pay our employees in 2 months. And that was a really, really terrible time. And we had to go to each employee one at a time and say, hey, can you take a pay cut? It was very, very hard. And you know what? Every single employee, we had around like 16, 17 employees, every single one took 0 pay. They say, we support you guys. You guys go and raise the Series A. We'll take no pay. We believe in the company. Go do it. And they took no pay for about a month and a half. And we raised Series A. Now, those are the type of people you want on your team. The people who believe in your company enough to take basically 0 pay, right? Because if in the case your company is on the verge of tanking, you don't want these people to leave because it just screws your company over. So it's extremely important when you're hiring is you have to bring on really great people who believe in your company as well. So interestingly enough, talking about hiring, I actually think one of the most valuable skills that you can have as a CTO. I mean, yes, in the beginning you add code, but it's your ability to bring on other engineers. It's your ability to, hire people, the recruiting aspect, because you have to build your team. And as an investor, like if I'm looking at your team, I want you to be able to build an engineering team. I don't care if you're the smartest person in the world on like engineering, but if you can't, hire a team, you can't build a company, you can't support the entire technical side on your own. So you got to be able to hire engineers. It's tough. It is very, very tough in the beginning. But as you build your brand, it gets easier. But like I said, you have to do the selling. As a CTO, you have to sell your company, your engineering team. And also, when you're hiring people, you don't want to hire people who just know like frameworks or stuff like that. You want to hire people who know like core CS concepts. You want to hire people who understand, how the whole model view controller stuff work, because it doesn't matter. Like they have to be able to do whatever framework that you choose, and it might evolve in the future. So a lot of people say hire fast, fire fast. You've probably heard that term before. I like to say hire slowly and fire fast. Hire slowly means you're hiring for, you're really picky about who you bring on your team. But then if they're not a good fit, you fire them really fast. You just fire them really fast. So like I said before, you don't want to hire people who just know a framework, because honestly, the stack that you choose right in the beginning, 2 or 3 years down the road, it might change, and it probably will change. And if your engineers cannot adapt to that change, then you're in trouble. So you got to hire people, bring on teammates that will adapt with your technology. They have to be able to do, program whatever language, just suck it up and learn a new language and just do it. Right? But they know the core concepts, say like model view controller concepts. They can switch from Django to Rails if you decide to do so, because they understand the concept. They just have to learn the syntax. It's really, really important because it will change. I guarantee you, your stack will change. So hiring is, like I said, it's really, really hard. And you will, if you don't know anybody, you will waste a lot of time interviewing. You waste a lot of time, going on LinkedIn, going on AngelList, searching for people, right? It's just a lot of time. That's why people hire recruiters. And that's why recruiters charge like $20,000, $30,000 per candidate if they get you that candidate. Because you're wasting your time doing that yourself. So the best way to hire people is to hire people you know already. So if you have a network of people, which you guys, you have a lot of friends in the CS department. The best way to hire people is to hire people you know, because you worked with them before, and you know their skills, you know how they work, and they trust you more, and they're more likely to join your company. And if you convince your friend to join, and that would just save you like 3 months, 4 months of trying to find someone who you don't know. Hiring people you know, it's so much. It just saves so much time. Like right now, when I'm starting Pathover, I already have a list of like 4 or 5 people in my head that I'm going to approach, that I'm going to try to get on my team. And the reason I do that ahead of time is because I don't want to spend 3 or 4 months trying to find a new person, because it is so time taxing. You waste so much time, and like what I said before, time and money is like such an important assets when you're building a company. And you think it sounds really strange, huh? Hiring takes 3 or 4 months. Yes, it takes 3 or 4 months to find a person. I guarantee you, it takes a long time to find a person of the right fit. So if you just know someone that you want to bring on, and you spend all your energy bringing them on, it saves you a lot more time. So I get this question a lot. Jonathan, how do you hire someone who's smarter than you? Say I'm only undergrad, right? I'm only undergrad, and I only know some, graduate with a computer science degree. How do I hire someone who has a PhD in machine learning? How do I hire someone who's an expert in natural language processing? I don't know that field, but I need it in my company, right? I'm the CTO. I don't know how to hire for this person. Well, interesting enough, I had no idea how to do this either when I was hiring for a data scientist back when I was a senior in college. What I did do was I asked around. I went to the computer science department. I asked professors. I asked them, since you guys are here at University of Maryland, utilize your professors. Go to the NLP professor expert, or like the machine learning teacher, and you just talk to them and say, hey, what does a good candidate look like in machine learning? Or you talk to the PhD candidates who are like in machine learning, right? You go there, you talk to them, and they get their opinion on what is a good candidate, because you don't know. That's not your area of expertise. And how I got my first data scientist was I asked one of the professors here, and he actually referred me to his top PhD student that was graduating that year. And then he ended up working at FiscalNote. And he was a great fit, and he was a great hire overall. So utilize your professors, utilize that network. Go to PhD students here at University of Maryland, and ask them, what is a good image processing person? Like what are good signs of a good data scientist? That's how you do it. You don't know, so you're asked. You go to the department and ask. Also, when you're interviewing, sometimes they become very technical, right? So what I say you need to do is hire for more culture fit than talent, because sometimes it's hard to judge talent when you don't know how to. So when I first hired our first data scientist, yes, I knew he was good because he was referred to me by my professor, but I hired him because he was a good culture fit. He seemed like he would work well with my team, right? And it ended up being really, really good. He worked extremely well with the team, and he ended up being one of the best hires I've ever done. But what if you made a bad hire, right? If you made a bad hire on a candidate you don't know how to evaluate, then you change the model. Now it's hire fast, fire fast, okay? So if you're really in the need of a data scientist, you don't know how to evaluate them, you don't know how to judge them because that's not your area of expertise, you just hire fast, right? You just bring someone on really fast, they seem like they're good, right? If they do really poorly, then you fire them fast and move on to the next person. You don't want to waste a lot of time here because this is not your area of expertise. Before, when you're hiring for engineers, right, this is your area, you can build apps, you know what to look for, so that's why you hire slowly. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you hire fast and you fire fast. And once you hire that one data scientist or whatever, and you let them hire the rest. So it's much easier that way. So generally, when you're building a software company, especially in the beginning at a startup, these are basically the positions you need. I broke it down for you. The first person you need is a backend engineer. Someone who can build the API, whether it's in Java, Python, Ruby, PHP, whatever the language is. They just need to build a backend API. And the next person you need is a front-end side. Whether it's a mobile app, you need someone on iOS or Android, or you need someone to build the front end of the web application, like whether it's in Ember or like Angular or Backbone. But if you're the CTO, if you can do the full stack is basically the top 3. And you can deploy a app, which is DevOps. DevOps you bring on a little bit later. Like you can kind of like bootstrap your way through DevOps. DevOps is basically the server stuff and getting your application into production and making sure things don't go wrong. So essentially, when you're building a tech team, you really need the top 3, especially in the beginning. And if you're a CTO that can do all three, that's great. But eventually you need to bring on more people to offload a lot of that work from you, because you're going to be doing the hiring. You're going to be going out there representing your company. You're going to be talking to investors as well. It's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to do. And there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to develop the app alongside full-time, alongside with all the other stuff that we talked about earlier in this presentation. So here's another topic that I need to stress, because like I said before, this topic gets overlooked extremely, like very, very often, especially when you're starting a company. Onboarding. So what is onboarding? Onboarding is basically when a new person comes on, you know, that new person joins your team and they have to basically learn all the practices, the tools, the structure of your code from scratch, right? They're being onboarded into your company. Now, you as the CTO, the technical person, you have the ability to make this fast. Right? A lot of, like, I made this huge mistake. Like, it used to take like a month for an engineer to onboard because they're just like fiddling around learning the code. And that's why choosing a great framework is important. Documenting your code is important. Having all these practices laid out ahead of time, maybe you create a document so that they can read it after you hire them. You send them a document, they can read the structure of your code, all the practice, all the tools you're using. And before they even jump on, say they say like, oh, I'm gonna spend a month traveling. You give them a package, say read this while you're on vacation. So when you come on, you just go, right? So hiring, you wanna hire fast, you wanna onboard really fast, because like I said before, and I'll emphasize over and over again, it's time and money. You wanna minimize the number of time in which someone's not being useful, because that is your job. Everything revolves around the business. You wanna get features out fast. So if they spend a month onboarding, that's just a waste of time. You want to get that, you want to cut that down to maybe a week. It takes them a week and then they start developing features. And bam, you know, you just keep going from there. So onboarding is very, very important along with hiring. And this all ties in with, you know, whatever framework you're using. It all ties together. So some little things that, you know, you're probably expecting me to talk about today. You want to push your code to like, you know, the place like GitHub or like Bitbucket, or sometimes if you don't want to use those services, you can push it on your own Git repository on AWS. I recommend pushing it to 2, at least 2, because I don't know if some of you know, GitHub went down like a couple months ago, and everyone went crazy. So it's good to have 2 places to push your code, right? And you know, if your team starts to grow to like to half a dozen people, you need like a project management application. Something like Jira or Pivotal Tracker. The free one is Trello. Trello, I recommend Trello if you're starting out because it's free. It basically helps you manage your tasks and manage everything among the engineers, so you work more efficiently. The next one is also something that's very important, is password management. All right, when you're building your team, you're going to have passwords to a bunch of, you know, like third-party APIs and whatever, and even in your company, this applies to your company in general, not just the tech team. You want to have a good password management system. So you can use something like KeePass, or I actually recommend LastPass. So you can use that to keep track of all the passwords that's being used in the company. And then, you know, certain tools like when you want to do continuous integration, which is I use tools like Jenkins or Maven or Travis. You know, you can use some of those tools. Solid communication applications include like Slack or HipChat, because as you grow, communication becomes exponentially harder with each new head you add on. It's easier to communicate between 2 people. But if you have like 10 people, it gets really, really hard. So you need a really, really good communication application. Another thing I want to emphasize is if you do a startup, it's probably going to be the hardest thing you ever do, because things will always go wrong. Like they will always go wrong constantly. Like your app might break, you know, you might lose a client, you might lose 5 clients in one day or whatever. You know, people may be talking crap about you on social media, and you just, a lot of times you're just going to feel down all the time. You know, your Series A investor might pull out, right? And there's a lot of times where you're just going to feel like down all the time. Your morale is going to be hit so hard. But you just got to calm down, think about how you can fix the problem, fix it, and move on. So the difference between serial entrepreneurs and first-time entrepreneurs, let me tell you. Serial entrepreneurs, they've been through their first venture, they've been through so much crap that if like, say like the whole entire site goes down in their second venture, they're just like, they won't be panicking. I guarantee they won't be panicking because they'll be like, okay, I just go onto terminal, you know, restart the server. Okay, everything's good. And you move on. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur, you're gonna be like crying. You'll be like, oh my God, this stuff happened. My company's gonna fail. Oh my God, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, like the investor's gonna be mad. You're gonna be worrying about so many things. But in reality, you should not be worried about it. You should just be focused on fixing the problem at hand, because almost every single day, like every single like week, something's gonna go wrong. And your job as a founder, the CTO, you just be the calm one. You find the root of the problem, you fix it, and you move on. Because there's gonna be another problem that's gonna happen in a week. I guarantee you that there will always be problems, whether on the technical side or the business side, the operations, whatever, there will always be problems. You just tackle it one at a time. And right now, like during Orange now, a lot of things went wrong. I was extremely calm about it and I just fixed it. But like during FiscalNote, it was like hell. It was like everyone was like panicking. You know, we were like, oh my God, we're gonna fail, all that stuff. But you just calm down and you just move on. You fix the problem, you move on. That's probably a really good piece of advice I actually got from another serial entrepreneur who told me that. It's actually the guy who started Hired.com. I sat next to him during a dinner once, and I asked him, you know, like, what's it like starting 3 companies? And he told me this exact thing I'm telling you today. After you started multiple companies, you get used to a lot of crap happening. And after you're on your 3rd company, it just doesn't affect you anymore. You just fix it and you move on. He had an employee die in his office. Someone died, right? This is what he told me. And he's just like, okay, I've been through everything. Someone died in my office. Like, he's been through everything. So as a serial entrepreneur, if you can take some of that serial entrepreneurness and apply it to your first venture, just be calm about all the bad things that are going to happen, because there are a lot of bad things that are going to happen. You fix it and you move on. So this is my last point. The last point I have today is you have one goal. There's usually a lot of tension between business and technology, the tech team, the engineering team and the business side, right? The engineering team, you know, they have their own practices. The business team needs to get a product out, and they kind of fight with each other for like deadlines and stuff. I'm sure if you work at internships, you'll know this. But ultimately, business will always win in almost all the arguments, because that's the most important thing. There's a reason it's called a business, right? Because business is first. You're building a business. You're not building a side project for your tech team. You're not building like this just cool app, right? It needs to make money somehow. Somehow it needs to make money. And like I said before, your customers don't care about what technology you use. They don't care how efficient it is. They don't care how clean your code is. They just want something to use. That's why you have to get it out as fast as you can. And that's why when business says, I need this thing out, you got to do whatever it takes to get it out as fast as you can, because customers are waiting. And I'm sure you guys don't want to wait for iPhone 7. You want it tomorrow, right? Like, it's the same thing. You're on the consumer side. You want things out. You don't care how it's built. Even if it's buggy, you know, you'll wait. You'll wait it out, and it will get fixed. That's how it is. And at the end of the day, you just have to push something out. Your job as a CTO is to just push something out. That is your one goal. Get that product out. Get that feature out as fast as you can. Test it, iterate, improve on it, and move on. So everything that I talked about today, from choosing your stack, from hiring, from like outsourcing, from basically all the operational stuff, right? Basically, everything I told you is to go towards this one goal. It's a business. You have to push things out fast. You have to make sure your team is efficient. You onboard people fast, you hire fast, you build fast, because this is a startup. You have a time limit. Corporations don't have a time limit. Startups do. Once your money runs out, you can't raise that Series B, you can't raise the next round because your money runs out. It's over. That's it. It's over. It's a game. And there's an end to it. And you don't want to reach the end. You want to make as much money as you can. You want to get as much traction as you can so you can raise the next round. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you all today. It's some things that most people don't think about. Most people just think, like, I'm going to just build this cool app, right? But if you're really serious about it, you're really serious about building a company, you're really serious about building a business, these are the things you need to think about. These things are not technical. These things that will make your business succeed. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Thanks for listening, and I'm going to open the floor to any questions. Yeah. Yeah. If I had to do it, I burn money. I burn money because I think my time is more valuable. So, yeah.
So look, the question, if you're somebody who's thinking about going to work for a startup,
yes,
and you're talking to their CTO, what are the questions you should ask the CTO to decide whether or not this is a good startup?
So that's a very interesting question. It also depends, that question depends on whether it's a person who's done it before or not. And I guarantee you, most of the time, if you're talking to a CTO, this is his first venture, they're not going to be doing any of this stuff. It's going to be like me. Like, you're going to go in there blind, right? But if you join that company, if you know the stuff, you can help that CTO, right? So you would say, okay, what's your hiring plan? What's your plan to, like, when you bring on more engineers, how are you going to make sure everyone's working really fast and efficient, right? Or like, do you plan to outsource any part of the technology? What do you care most about? Like, what is your focus? Like, do you care about how awesome this app is structured, or you care about making money for the business? So stuff like that, I'll ask the CTO basically, what is their goal? Like, what are they trying to do? Do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. 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 So technically, the company was sold, or is in the process of being sold. So they're going to own the entire company. Pathover is a completely new company. So luckily, we have no employees, so they just get the assets. They get the name, the customer list, the partner, grocery store list, and that's basically it. They do get the assets, but in Pathover, the technology is going to be completely different. It's kind of like the same concept, but it's completely different. Yeah. Oh, okay. I think I forgot to talk about that. But always think around 4 to 6 months ahead of time when you're hiring. So even before I begin Pathover, I already know who I'm going to hire for the next 8 months. Because like I said before, you waste a lot of time. You waste a lot of time hiring. And you never want to hire someone right when you need it, because you're not going to get that person for 6 months. You want to hire someone way before you need that person. So if you know like who you need, kind of map it out. So like I said, you need a backend engineer, you need a front engineer. Maybe you don't need them now, but you should be actively looking for those people right now. Right? I would say 3 to 6 months, and depending on, it really depends. So 3 to 6 months, that's when, ahead of time. Almost like 3 to 6 months ahead of time for each new position. So that's why you have a hiring plan. So then you know when to start hiring versus when that person needs to come on. So, yeah. Yeah.
When did you know that like it was time to sell the company? And did you go out like looking for people to buy the company, or did people come to you looking for like buy? And also, is like Orange now like the beta version of Passover? You just sold that, how you make it better?
So, all right. So, to answer your first question, we were talking to investors, and after a lot of them told us they wanted us to pursue technology, that's kind of like when we knew we had to shut Orange Now down. And in the process of shutting Orange Now down, one of our grocery partners said, "Oh, don't shut down. We still want to use you guys. How about, I want to buy you guys." That's kind of how it worked. We didn't actively go out and try to find someone. Maybe this was just luck right here, but basically that's what happened. That's how Orange Now generated interest in the buyout. And then for the other question, what was the other question again? The last one?
The other question is,
oh, it's the beta version, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So we actually, the technology we use in the background, the whole routing, the optimization, we want to prove that by kind of showing that it works in the grocery industry. And as a result of that, we built this kind of like online grocery store, which happened to get a lot of customers. And that's how the grocery partner got interested in just that part. They wanted the grocery store part. So they didn't really care about the technology at all. So that's how we were able to just like, okay, we're gonna just pursue technology. Yeah. Yeah, so this I don't think there's a definite answer to this, but generally, founders usually get a majority of the equity, and at a certain time, you create something called an employee pool. So I don't know if you guys know what an employee pool is. It's basically like you just take like 10 or 15% out of all the founders' equity, and that is just going to sit there, and you're going to use that 15% to bring on new employees. So you take out of that pool. That's why it's called a pool. So if you hire someone new, say you want to give them 0.5%, you take it out of that pool, right? So now you have this pool, and depending on what stage your company is at, say you're really, really new and you want to bring on an employee, then you got to give them a pretty significant amount of equity, probably between like 5 and 10%. But say you just raise a seed round. Now, once you raise the seed round, it's completely different. Like a lot of equity is around 1%. 1% is a lot of equity after you basically raise a seed round, because they reduce so much risk, right? So much risk is reduced when you raise a seed round, because investors put like $1 million in you, right? There's some potential. There's a lot of potential in it. So 1% would be like you hire like 1 to 1.5% would be like hiring a chief data scientist, or like, and the chief operations officer would be like around like 1.5% to 2% around that time. If you bring on a CEO, CEO is really, really costly. So even if you're around like Series C, if you bring on a CEO, you might have to give around like 3, 4, 5% right there, right? But if you want to hire engineers, the sweet spot is usually around 0.25 to 0.75, depending on how good they are, around after seed round. And then with each round, it gets lower because the risk is reduced for that person, and you're able to pay them a little bit more. So if you're hiring engineers, around 0.25 to 0.75%. If you're hiring like executives, directors, it's usually around like 0.75 to 1.25%. And as you grow, as you get Series A, Series B, I would say, like you reduce that by like, 25% or 30%. It gets lower and lower and lower. Yeah.
Walk us through your process for raising your first round of funding for FiscalNote, and then along with that, how do you determine which investors to go with?
Okay. So with FiscalNote, honestly, so what I like to tell people is, if you don't have a network, a really good network, what you do is you find the most important person in your network, even if it's a very small network, and you start from there, right? So you kind of just like bother that most important person and for a while until they introduce you another more important person and whatnot. That's if you can take that approach, and that usually works pretty well. But if you truly don't have a network, or you don't want to bother this person all the time, you have to put yourself out there. You go to events like all the time. And we were in San Francisco. We literally went to like an event almost every single night. Me, Tim, is my other FiscalNote co-founder, and Gerald. Like we constantly went to events every night. Like whether it's through meetups.com, the Facebook events, we just went. And we just talked to a bunch of people. And through that, if you're actively doing that, you'll eventually get introduced to someone, right? And what we did was we basically just massaged the network. We said, hey, do you know anyone who's in this space? Or do you know any investors in this space? And eventually they'll point you to someone, and you kind of just like chase after that person. That's if you're starting out from scratch. That's how I would do it, right? But we were also in an incubator, which helped because the managing director of that incubator, he basically just referred us to a bunch of investors that he knew. So, but if you're starting from scratch, go to a lot of events. Go to the most important person in your network that you know, and kind of like, bother that person. So yeah. And then what's just the second question? Yeah.
How do you choose like the investors around?
Okay, so honestly, it's like finding a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Because like if you don't get along with the investors, even though they have a lot of money, you don't want to work with that person. If they have a reputation for like kicking out founders, like Sequoia, no offense to Sequoia, but but basically, then you might not want to work with those type of investors, right? And it's going to be like a marriage relationship with your investor, because they're going to be constantly emailing you back. You have to give them updates and whatnot. So when you choose the investor, you have to get along with them when you're pitching with them. That's one thing. And then another thing is you're looking for skills that the investors have that you don't have. So for example, say you are a technical founder and you're a really business savvy founder, right? But let's just say you're going to grow the company. You need someone who's very experienced with operations, right? You don't have anyone in your network who's experienced. You have no one on your team who's experienced. So you want to fill in this gap, and you can actually use this the investors to fill in that gap. So you might want to find an investor who has a lot of operations experience, or who knows a lot of operations people, so they can help you out when you're growing your company. Or say even marketing, right? Investor who just knows marketing a lot. So you kind of use them when you're looking for these type of investors. You look for like whether you work well with them and whether they can fill in a kind of like a gap in your company. So that's what we were looking for. Yeah.
So to get where you are today by being more stoked about like the niche technology thing or like the products that you work alongside with, or is it more so because you enjoy the whole like executive organization and like bringing people together and like believe in certain ideas?
Wait, can you rephrase that question, or like?
Do you get where you are today by being more stoked about the technology or about bringing like the conglomerate, bringing people together and like managing? You know what I mean?
So even though I preach a lot about these things, that the operations side and all the hiring stuff, I love coding. I really love coding. That's also another reason why I started Orange now, because I want to get back into the code. So I love technology. That's why I even use Node.js in Orange now, because I want to try the new technology. But the problem is, at a certain point, you have to realize that it's a business. And I guess that hit me hard when I was doing Orange now, because I should have chosen a different framework. And all these things that you don't think about because you're so purely focused on the technology can kind of be like, very dangerous. So if you're like the technical lead, I think you got to think about all these things. And if you bring out another engineer, you kind of take off all that weight off of them, like thinking about all this stuff, and they can focus more on the technology. Or if you want to be just a purely technical, you bring on someone who can think about this stuff for you. So it's, for me, in the beginning I coded a lot, and I kind of evolved into this role. I kind of learned a lot about all this stuff that I just presented here today. So I honestly don't know what contributes to where I am today. I did both of them. Like I was very tech heavy and coded, and I focused on the operations a lot. Anyone else?
Actually, let me throw out one recommendation to the students who are thinking about fundraising. One of the things to do, find meetups to go where other people are pitching. Listen to pitches. Right? There's things, tech breakfast in Columbia. You could go to the Demon Angels as a guest with somebody. But that's something I think you all would be a really good thing to do, is just listen to some people who've gone through this and listen to them pitch. Because I mean, like the Sharp Shell Expo is good. It's sort of an earlier stage than most of the people at these other things. I think that's a good thing for everybody to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Any small tips for
example would be a daily stand-up.
Yeah, so like using a daily stand-up. So like all the stuff you read about startups, like daily stand-up, you know, using Jira, all that stuff, use GitHub, continuous integration, like that stuff you can read about. And I guess the tip that I have is, okay, so tips about the little things are, oh, okay. One thing I really stressed out at FiscalNote was the basically the documentation, and there's little things like in your text editor, right? You want to get rid of the white space on save. These are like really granular things. And you want to put an end line at the end of the file, because one time, this actually happened to us. One time, and one of my data scientists was using Perl, and there was not an end line at the end of the file, and the whole entire like platform crashed, the whole data science platform. We couldn't figure it out for like 8 hours. And then we realized it's because he needed an end line at the end of the file. It was really, really dumb. So since then, we put an end line. We told everyone in their text editors to put an end line at the end of the file. And then you want to keep spaces soft tabs. So like you want them to be spaces and not tabs, because depending on what editor you open it up with, you know, you don't want it to look funky, right? So those are like small things that could really help a lot when you're reading other people's code, and to make sure your code is pretty clean. I don't know if that's what type of advice. Yeah, style guide is good. I would not create your own style guide. Like I said, time and money, right? You just use one that someone else made on the internet and follow that one. Yeah.
So going back to when you started FiscalNote, and you guys are real small and you don't have any like name brand, there's very little momentum behind you guys. How do you convince people to drop what they're doing and join your team? Like, what do you pitch? What do you say?
Oh my God, so that was a huge problem. That was a huge problem. And it was very, very interesting, because in the beginning, a lot of people thought we were just like something with the government, like government contractor, right? And we realized, me and Tim, we sat down and talked about it. Tim's the CEO. And we're like, how do we convince people, you know, we're not just like a government contractor type business? And I said, like, you know, we have to have two different messages here. We have to have a message to sell to our clients, which is government platform, right? And then we have to have a message to sell to hiring people. The message that we sold to hiring people was that we were a data science heavy machine learning AI company, which is true, because we spend a lot of time massaging our prediction models to predict whether legislation passes, right? So we focus really, really hard on our slogan for the engineering side is open data engineered. We do not want to show that we're government. So like little things that you do to attract engineering, like we use like big words like, you know, data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Like you want to attract great talent, right? So you kind of can't like be like boring. So we heavily advertised ourselves as that type of company, like a tech company, right? And in the beginning, it was still hard. So we went to hackathons, we went to career fairs, and we try to push really, really hard that we were a tech company. We were doing cool things. We're doing like machine learning. You want to join, you want to check out what we're doing. And eventually, after doing that, you know, for a couple of hackathons, we started to build a brand. And we were trying so hard to make sure that we were not put in like the government contracting category to, you know, developers. It was really hard in the beginning, but eventually it worked out. Like I said, we went to a bunch of hackathons. We went to talks, and we talked about a technology. We didn't say anything about government. We just talked about the data science behind everything. So you, like I said before, you got to put yourself out there. You got to, like I wrote some blogs about our engineering, and you kind of just have to have a social media presence. You have to go to events. You have to talk about your own technology. That's how you attract more people and build a reputation. Yeah. Yeah. So one fear, I guess it was constantly, I had a fear of whether or not I could actually build this for FiscalNote. Like in the beginning, I honestly had no idea what I was doing. Like to tell you the truth, I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew is I had to build something so I can get it out and sell it. And Tim was depending on me, and Gerald, my other co-founder, was depending on me. And I honestly had no idea what I was doing. It was like I haven't even built a full-fledged web app before, or a full-fledged application before. But so it was very, very scary in the beginning because I had no idea what I was doing. I keep emphasizing that. And it's okay. It's okay to have no idea what you're doing because like all the things I learned is what were the things that I learned from my mistakes. There's so many mistakes I made, but I mean, I learned from them, right? So the fear is basically, I didn't know whether I could build this or not. And, I knew I needed help, and it's okay to know that you need help. So I actually brought on one of my friends. Like I said, I didn't spend a lot of time hiring for that one. I just went to him and talked to him, and he joined immediately. And together, that kind of offset a lot of my fears because I didn't want to do it alone. And together, we built FiscalNote, the first iteration. It was really, really bad. And I continuously had the fear of whether, so after the fear of whether or not I can actually build it, the next fear is whether or not customers actually use it, right? That's probably going to be a fear that, everyone's going to have because you're going to build something and you don't know whether that's what the customers want. And it was always constantly a fear because our platform broke a lot, and customers they're always like, I don't think we need it. It's really draining on you. It's like it hurts. It hurts so much when you build something, you work so hard, and people don't want to use it. So those were the two fears I'd say I had. They eventually were overcome because I realized, like I said before, it doesn't matter as much. That if someone complains, you fix it and you move on. If you can't do it, if you think you can't do it, then you won't be able to do it. But if you think you can do it, I guarantee you'll be able to do it. Like especially when people depend on you, and you want to do this, you've given up a lot to do it, you will figure out a way to do it. So, all right.
Thank you so much, John. It was great.
Thanks for having me. Thanks
Yeah.
for setting up.
Yeah, no problem. I think we're done here. So.